Just when you thought we dug up every last secret from Night of the Living Dead, we found 20 more hiding 6 feet under. From real graveyards to hidden cameramen, creepy prop mix-ups, and actors who played more than one ghoul, this part 2 is packed with the kind of weirdness that makes you want to rewatch the whole movie, just to spot what you missed the first time. Fact 1. Duane Jones was originally a college professor. Before he made horror history, Duane Jones wasn't chasing stardom. He was teaching literature and drama at SUNY Old Westbury. In fact, he held a master's degree and spoke multiple languages, including French and Spanish. After Night of the Living Dead, he didn't jump into Hollywood. Instead, he focused on education and the arts, eventually becoming the director of the Black Theater Alliance. Jones also worked behind the scenes in cultural affairs and founded multiple programs to support African American artists, while fans remember him as Ben, the capable and calm hero of Romero's zombie apocalypse. Off-screen, he was a real-life intellectual powerhouse. For someone who gave us one of horror's most iconic survivors, it's fitting that he also spent his life helping others find their voice. Fact 2. Barbara's reflection accidentally shows the cameraman. One of the earliest goofs in Night of the Living Dead is something most people miss, but once you spot it, you can't unsee it. During a tense scene where Barbara runs past a farmhouse window, there's a brief moment where you can see the reflection of the cameraman right in the glass. It's not a ghost or a ghoul, just low-budget filmmaking at work. The crew didn't catch it at the time, and even if they had, they didn't have the budget for reshoots. It's one of those little accidents that slipped into the final cut. But here's the thing. The raw, imperfect style of the movie actually helps it feel more real. That tiny mistake just adds to the gritty, documentary-like vibe Romero accidentally created. A moment of imperfection that helped build a horror masterpiece.
Look, I know you're afraid. I'm afraid too.
Fact 3. The same actors played multiple zombies. If you think some of the ghouls in Night of the Living Dead look strangely familiar, you're not wrong. Because of the limited budget, many actors played multiple roles, sometimes dying in one scene, then shuffling back on screen later in a different costume. One person might play a victim in the farmhouse early on and then show up as a zombie just an hour later. Romero made use of whatever bodies he had on set that day, literally. Some actors even played live humans in the beginning of the film, then came back as the undead after their characters were killed. The trick? Change the lighting, smear some makeup, and have them move slower. It worked so well that most audiences never noticed. It's one of those DIY solutions that helped stretch the film's budget and cemented Romero as the king of indie horror. Fact 4. Marilyn Eastman did her own makeup and everyone else's. Marilyn Eastman wasn't just Helen Cooper in the movie, she was also the film's head makeup artist. With no formal crew for hair, makeup, or effects, Eastman stepped up and handled much of the gore herself. That trowel-stabbing scene with her on-screen daughter, she applied her own prosthetics. She even created some of the zombie looks using everyday kitchen supplies and paint. Talk about multitasking. Eastman also helped with wardrobe and props, basically doing the job of 3 people behind the scenes. Her dedication went far beyond acting, and her behind-the-camera work helped sell the film's most gruesome moments. On a bigger budget film, she might have had her own department. On Night of the Living Dead, she was the department. Fact 5. Kira Sean later became a radio host. Most people only know Kira Sean as the creepy little girl with the trowel, one of the film's most haunting characters. But after her brief acting role, Kira went on to live a pretty normal life until the cult following caught up with her. She later resurfaced in the horror community as a guest speaker at conventions and interviews. Eventually, she co-hosted a horror radio podcast called The Ghouls Next Door, where she shared her experiences and talked about classic films. Despite being part of one of the most iconic horror scenes ever filmed, she never took herself too seriously. Fans loved her mix of insider stories and self-aware humor. For someone who terrified an entire generation with one silent murder scene, she turned out to be one of the genre's most unexpectedly charming voices. Fact 6. The opening graveyard was a real cemetery. That eerie cemetery in the opening scene wasn't a Hollywood set. It was Evans City Cemetery, a real burial ground in Pennsylvania. The production had permission to film there, but they had to be extremely careful not to damage the tombstones or disturb the graves. In fact, in some shots, you can see the real names on the headstones. No props needed. Romero and his team shot there on chilly mornings when the fog was real and the cold added to the actors' unease. And yes, there were fresh burials nearby while they filmed. Imagine acting out a horror scene while real funerals were taking place just out of frame. That's the kind of eerie authenticity you can't fake. The cemetery still stands today, and horror fans regularly visit the site to pay tribute to the film that started it all. Fact 7. Some of the cast was reused in later films. George Romero had a habit of working with familiar faces, and several actors from Night of the Living Dead reappeared in his later films. Bill Hinzman, who played the first zombie in the cemetery, went on to direct and star in a zombie film of his own called Flesh Eater in 1988. George Casana, who played the sheriff with the iconic "They're dead, they're all messed up" line, popped up in There's Always Vanilla, another early Romero project. Even some minor crew members became background extras in future zombie films. Romero treated his team like a horror family, bringing people back again and again. It created a weird, extended zombie cinematic universe decades before Marvel made it trendy. Fact 8. The rifle used in the film was real. That rifle Ben uses to take down ghouls, not a prop. It was a real, fully functioning firearm. Safety standards in 1968 were nothing like they are today, and that meant the cast was handling an actual weapon on set. Dwayne Jones had to be incredibly careful during takes, especially in scenes where he aimed it at other actors. The production team kept a close eye on it, but the fact remains, live weapons on a no-budget horror set is a terrifying idea in hindsight. Fortunately, no accidents occurred, but the intensity of those scenes feels real because, well, it was. That tension you see when Ben raises the rifle, part of that was Dwayne Jones being 100% focused on not accidentally hurting someone. Now, that's realism, the dangerous kind. Fact 9. Judith Ridley was cast after a random audition. Judith Ridley, who played Judy, wasn't a professional actress, not even close. She was working in a different field entirely when her husband, who was helping with the production, suggested she audition. She showed up for a small part and impressed Romero so much that he gave her a larger role. Ridley was nervous on camera, but that vulnerability actually added to her performance, making Judy feel more relatable and human. She later acted in There's Always Vanilla and Season of the Witch, 2 more Romero projects, but her debut in Night of the Living Dead remains her most iconic role, one that she landed by pure chance and a little bit of nerve. Fact 10. The TV was borrowed from a crew member's mom. That old television in the farmhouse, the one blaring emergency broadcasts and government warnings, it wasn't a prop. It was a real TV set borrowed from one of the crew members' mothers. They needed something that looked authentic, which basically meant whatever was in someone's living room. The team promised to return it unharmed, but the set took a beating during filming. It was moved around, stacked on furniture, and even used as a lighting anchor during certain shots. Miraculously, it survived. After production wrapped, they returned it, and it supposedly still worked. Somewhere out there, that old TV might still be sitting in a basement, unaware it played a starring role in horror history.
This is the latest disclosure in a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington.
Fact 11. There's a hidden continuity error in the fire scene. During the tense Molotov cocktail scene, where the survivors throw firebombs out the window to hold off the ghouls, there's a sneaky little mistake most people miss. If you pause at just the right moment, you'll see a character appear on the porch who isn't supposed to be there yet. It's a clear continuity error caused by Romero splicing together multiple takes from different days. The lighting doesn't match either, but it all flies by so quickly, most audiences never notice. These little errors are sprinkled throughout the movie, but because of its gritty, documentary-like style, they blend into the chaos. What's amazing is that it doesn't hurt the film. It actually adds to the raw, real-world energy. Instead of a slick Hollywood production, we're watching something that feels like it's unfolding in real time, flaws and all. It's a happy accident that just adds to the mythos. Fact 12, the ghouls make animal noises. If you listen closely during some of the attack scenes, you'll hear something strange, and it's not human. That's because Romero added subtle animal sounds, mostly pig squeals and dog growls, into the audio mix to make the ghouls sound more unsettling. It's not obvious at first, but it gives the zombies an otherworldly, feral vibe. The sounds were slowed down, distorted, and layered under the moans and groans of the actors. In one sequence, pig squeals are so warped they sound like a dying human, which made the effect even creepier. This little sound design trick went on to influence countless horror films, especially Dawn of the Dead and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which also used pig squeals to unsettle the audience. It's one of those small touches you don't consciously notice, but your brain registers something primal and deeply wrong. Fact 13, props were taken from the dump. You know all that furniture in the farmhouse? The dusty chairs, the half-broken dressers, the clutter in the kitchen. Most of it came from a local dump. The crew was given permission to raid garbage piles, abandoned homes, and thrift shops to decorate the set. This was low-budget filmmaking at its grimiest. Some items still had stains, others had bugs in them. A few pieces even had to be aired out before use because of the smell. But all that grime and decay gave the house an authentic, lived-in feel. And because they didn't care about damaging anything, the actors could smash, flip, and destroy props in their scenes. No need to protect the set. Romero always said that the house was its own character in the movie, and that character was built from other people's trash. Fact 14, juice boxes were used for blood packs. Blood effects on a budget require creativity, and one of the wildest tricks the Night of the Living Dead crew used? Juice boxes. Seriously. In a few close-up scenes, they filled drink boxes or plastic pouches with dyed syrup and hid them under clothes. When someone got bitten or stabbed, they'd squeeze the box and, boom, instant blood spurt. It was a homemade version of the squib effect, minus the explosives. In black and white, the thickness and color didn't matter. It just had to look dramatic and messy. Some juice pouches even leaked early, forcing the actors to improvise mid-scene. It wasn't perfect, but it got the job done. And once again, the resourcefulness of the crew proved that low budget doesn't mean low impact. Sometimes all you need is a juice box and a screen. Fact 15, Kira Shawn couldn't watch her death scene. Kira Shawn may have played one of horror's most terrifying kids, but even she couldn't bring herself to watch her character's big moment. In the now infamous basement scene, her character Karen stabs her mother to death with a trowel in total silence, one of the most disturbing kills in horror history. But Kira, who was only 11 at the time, said she was so disturbed by the finished scene that she avoided watching it for years. On set, it felt silly and theatrical. She was stabbing the air with a fake tool while her real-life dad, producer Carl Hardman, stood off camera giving her directions. But when she saw the final cut, with eerie lighting, creepy silence, and those stabbing sound effects, it hit her like a gut punch. She didn't realize just how chilling it would be. Even decades later, she called it hard to watch. Fact 16, several scenes were improvised. Romero didn't just direct his cast, he gave them room to play. A lot of Night of the Living Dead's dialogue was improvised or loosely scripted, especially the intense confrontations between Ben and Harry Cooper. Dwayne Jones and Carl Hardman were encouraged to react naturally to one another, and many of their arguments were shot in long takes with minimal interruption. That gave the film a tense, unfiltered feel, more like a documentary than a scripted horror film. In fact, Romero often preferred the unscripted takes to the rehearsed ones. Some of Barbara's dialogue was also created on the spot when Judith O'Dea couldn't remember her lines, and Romero just told her to stay in shock. The result? One of the most realistic, chaotic, and emotionally raw horror films ever made, all thanks to letting the actors go off script. Fact 17, Romero wanted to call it Night of Anubis. Believe it or not, Night of the Living Dead wasn't the first title Romero had in mind. His original name for the film was Night of Anubis, referencing the Egyptian god of the dead. It sounded spooky and mythological, but early feedback was that nobody would know what Anubis meant, so he changed it to Night of the Flesh Eaters, which was even creepier. But then the distributor worried that sounded like a grindhouse porno, so they finally settled on Night of the Living Dead. a title that stuck like a headshot. Ironically, the final title became so iconic it defined an entire genre, but it almost ended up sounding like an Egyptian mummy movie, and horror history might have looked very different. Fact 18. The film was almost lost forever. Because the movie fell into the public domain, nobody officially preserved the original film negatives. Over time, the best copies degraded, and by the 1980s, most home video versions looked like muddy, scratchy messes. For years, horror fans traded bootlegs and worn VHS copies with faded images and missing scenes. It wasn't until the late 1990s that preservationists tracked down a surviving print and began restoration. Thanks to those efforts and a push from film historians, the movie was eventually archived by the Library of Congress. Today, it's available in high-resolution digital formats, but we were this close to losing the original version forever. If not for die-hard fans and archivists, the film that started the zombie revolution might have decayed just like its ghouls. Fact 19. The basement door was a real trapdoor. That rickety trapdoor that Ben locks himself behind in the final scene? Totally real. It was part of the actual farmhouse and wasn't built by the crew. The problem was, it didn't work very well. It creaked, jammed, and often wouldn't close all the way. Dwayne Jones had to press it shut with his foot in several takes, and sometimes hold it down manually during filming so it wouldn't pop open at the wrong moment. The door added great atmosphere, but it was a nightmare to shoot around. Yet again, budget limitations turned into a creative strength. The awkward, off-kilter look of that basement entrance only made the finale feel more desperate, like a man literally forcing himself into a grave. Fact 20, the sheriff's line was improvised and became iconic. Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up. That line, delivered with dry detachment by Sheriff McClelland, has become one of the most quoted in horror history. But here's the kicker. It wasn't in the script. Actor George Cassana improvised it on the spot, and Romero loved the deadpan delivery so much he kept it. That unscripted moment with its mix of gallows humor and blunt horror perfectly captured the movie's tone. It's grim, it's weirdly casual, and it sticks with you long after the credits roll. Cassana later said he had no idea it would become so iconic. He was just trying to sound like a no-nonsense sheriff doing his job. But that offhand remark became the cherry on top of a truly bleak ending, and a perfect farewell to one of the darkest nights in cinema. And there you have it. 20 more weird, wild, and creepy facts about Night of the Living Dead that prove this cult classic still has secrets hiding in the shadows. From juice box blood packs to graveyard filming and cast members who couldn't even watch their own death scenes, this film just keeps getting weirder the deeper you dig. But now, we want to hear from you. What horror movies, cult classics, or behind-the-scenes stories should we unearth next? Got a favorite slasher, an underrated 80s gem? A movie so strange, it has to have a dark backstory? Drop your suggestions in the comments. We read everyone, and your idea just might be featured in our next video. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more horror deep dives, and tap the bell so you don't miss what rises from the grave next.